Jordan.
Jeff Hardy versus Raven at TNA Lockdown 2005. This match is one of the first matches I can think of when it comes to my fandom of wrestling. I came across this match on random, I remember back when I was living in London, we had a Skybox. I remember I was scrolling through channels and then there was like a wrestling specific channel. I don't think it was anything in particular, it was just like wrestling TV or something like that. I can't remember the name of the channel. Anyway, when I clicked on the channel, this is the match that popped up. Now prior to this, I had seen wrestling before. I had seen WWE. That was the only exposure I had to it. So I knew of wrestling, I knew of WWE specifically, but I'm gonna be honest, and I'm sure a lot of you out there have this moment too. I didn't know wrestling expanded outside of just WWE. I thought it was WWE and that's it. Because I was a kid, I didn't know that there was like different wrestling organizations, local organizations, none of that yet. So this was my first introduction to anything outside of WWE. And it just so happened to be, at the time, arguably the second biggest wrestling organization in the world, which was TNA. This was the match that popped up when I clicked on the channel. And to say it was a banger is an understatement. Jeff Hardy and Raven killed it in this match. The spot which stands out in particular for me is a spot where, I think it was Raven, he was lying across I swear it was like 4 tables or something. He was like lying across quite a few. And then Jeff Hardy, I swear hits like either just a typical body splash or a swanton bomb off the top of the cage, through Raven, through the tables. That's what really got me into more of TNA's catalog. I wanted to see what else there was out there because none of my friends were talking about TNA really at the time. So I was really the only one. I felt like this was my own exclusive fandom that no one else had, you know what I mean? It was like my unique experience for it. I didn't have anyone else to go to when it came to opinions on TNA, what superstars to have a look out for. So every single time I watched TNA after that, it was all my own, first impressions. And Jeff Hardy and Raven definitely left a lasting impression on me. Jeff Hardy in particular, because I actually didn't even see his WWE work up to this point. Mike Awesome versus Masado Tanaka, ECW, One Night Stand 2005. It was just absolute mayhem from start to finish. I'd never seen anything like it. Even to this day, some of the spots in that match were crazy, but the spot that I want to talk about specifically was towards the end. I think he hit, I don't know what his finisher is. Is it the Awesome Bomb? It's kind of like a Celtic Cross or like a Razor's Edge of sorts. So man hits that finisher outside of the ring through a table, right? Masado Tanaka is grabbing his head, trying his best not to scream. I still remember his face to this day. Man looked like he was in anguish, And then I don't know, the camera's holding a shot on Masado Tanaka here, right? Doing a close-up, trying to capture the carnage of what just occurred, right? But Mike Awesome said, nah, screw that. I ain't giving you no time to breathe. And man just hits a dive straight out onto Masado Tanaka, into the carnage of the tables that were broken, and I'm like, what is going on? As a kid, that spot was crazy to me. That spot was nuts, but there were other spots throughout the match as well that were just crazy. Obviously it was an anything goes match. There were no disqualifications in this match. Anything went. It was bananas from start to finish. They were putting on a banger. John Cena versus Shawn Michaels versus Edge versus Randy Orton at Backlash 2007 for the WWE Championship. One of my all-time favorites. This was prime WWE for me. I would want to say 2004, 2005 is prime, but I can't really say it's in its prime when I first started watching it, you know what I mean? So 2007, that was when I was the biggest WWE fan. I couldn't talk about anything else IRL other than WWE. This was when all my mates were watching WWE, We used to watch WWE on the weekly, play the video games, this was prime WWE. And this match really encapsulates what prime WWE was to me. John Cena, Shawn Michaels, my two all-time favorites in terms of baby faces, and Edge and Randy Orton, my two all-time favorites when it comes to heels. The only other wrestlers that I'd say crack into my like top echelon of favorite wrestlers of all time would be like a Rey Mysterio, AJ Styles, and then a smattering of other wrestlers as well. But these four, this is the Mount Rushmore for me. Not necessarily in terms of, you know, like impact on the business. Like I'll be honest, this Mount Rushmore, it's extremely biased. I'll take that. But yeah, man, the match itself, action from start to finish. When you've got 4 superstars in the ring as well, fighting for the WWE Championship, you already know it's going to be crazy. It's going to be crazy. And then the spot that stands out to me in this match has to be the closing sequence. I think we got kind of like a callback to it recently in like a NXT pay-per-view. I think it might have been, what pay-per-view was it? Might have been NXT Heat Wave, I think it was. It was like Trick Williams, Javon Evans, Ethan Page, and Shawn Spears. That's it. Yeah, we had like a kind of a callback to that. I think the callback was to this match. Crazy end sequence. Hadn't seen anything like that up until this point as a wrestling fan. It's what shaped my wrestling taste when it comes to match quality as a fan as well. Unforgiven 2006, where John Cena and Edge fought for the WWE Championship in a TLC match. So I actually was familiar of the TLC concept prior to this because of obviously the first 3 to 4 that I'd seen, including like the Hardys, the Dudleys, Edge and Christian, and that classic TLC 4 match that was on Raw. John Cena is my favorite wrestler of all time. But as a kid, I always had a bias towards his matches. Like any match he was in, it didn't matter if he was fighting Randy Orton or what was bro's name? Do y'all remember Kevin Federline? Underrated heel, might I add, but yeah, it didn't matter if it was Randy Orton or Kevin Federline. It was going to be a 5-star classic in my eyes, and this was no different. The table spot in particular is what stands out to me in this match. I think if you're familiar with this match, you know what I'm talking about. Edge and Cena put their bodies on the line in this match, man. I think this might have been, if I remember correctly, I think this is what closed out their feud in 2006 as well. So what a match to end it on. But you know, there was plenty of chair spots, ladder spots, and table spots throughout the entire match. Had a little bit of something for everyone, I feel. And it also was a unique concept in this match because that, apart from, I believe, One Night Stand, and I don't even know if One Night Stand had happened up to this point, but we hadn't really seen John Cena as the heel for quite some time since his original run as the Doctor of Thugonomics. Seeing him kind of play the heel role in a way, because Edge, it was his hometown. It was quite interesting seeing like Edge as like a baby face of sorts and then John Cena as the heel. Like it was a unique concept. I know obviously in the match, Edge still did heel things, John Cena was still doing babyface things, and the crowd, although they were pro Edge, there were some Cena fans out there, but I thought that was also a unique element that stood out to me as well, because that seeing the roles reversed in this feud was something to just add that much more to this final match of theirs for the year. If I remember correctly, Umaga versus John Cena. When it comes to John Cena, when I think of his greatest matches of all time, this is, I'd say, his greatest singles match of all time, aside from his match with Shawn Michaels. This match really stood out amongst any other match that we'd seen on the pay-per-view or any other match that we really saw throughout 2007. John Cena, the biggest babyface in the company at that point, versus Umaga, the unstoppable heel that a lot of people on the roster were having a hard time trying to defeat. And they went out there and had a slugfest. The spot which stood out in particular for me here would have to be John Cena lawn darting steel steps into Umaga's face to the outside. That spot was crazy. Seriously, man. John Cena, he put in a Superman performance in this match. This was like a comic book match almost, you know? This was on some like Iron Man versus Thanos type shit, you know what I mean? Craziness. The match was barbaric, it had blood, it had violence, weapons going all over the place. Crazy stuff, man, and definitely contributed to why I am a wrestling fan still to this day. Rey Mysterio versus Kurt Angle at the SummerSlam 2002 pay-per-view. What do I have to say for this match, really, that hasn't already been said? This match is on a lot of people's top 10s, I'm pretty sure. If you're a fan, especially during the Ruthless Aggression era, this has to be in your top 10. I've seen so many top 10 lists over the years, whether it be, greatest matches in under 10 minutes, greatest Ruthless Aggression matches, greatest SummerSlam matches, This always finds a spot in the top 10. And it was the first match on the card. I don't think you can really get a better first match than this as well. I would like to see more first matches on pay-per-view cards just like this one. Fast, high-octane action from the get-go, where we don't really get a chance to breathe as wrestling fans, Just the match being jam-packed with action from start to finish. Simple as that. From memory, one of the first matches that I'd seen as a wrestling fan as well. This was one of my first introductions. I'd seen it after the pay-per-view took place, of course. But when I first got into wrestling, this was one of the first matches I saw. And it left a lasting impression on me. I think I was really gravitated towards Rey Mysterio as the underdog in this match. He gave me like Spider-Man vibes as a kid, It was like seeing a comic book hero come to life, and the work rate of Kurt Angle, phenomenal wrestler. It was a match made in heaven. Simple as that. The spot that sticks out to me in this match, funnily enough, is the opening spot. So yeah, man, quick, effective match. I feel like if you're showing someone wrestling for the first time and you don't know what sort of match you want to show them to start with, I feel like this match, I feel like WrestleMania 40 with Roman Reigns and Cody Rhodes, it has everything you could want. This match in particular, because that is quick, fast-paced, and it has a very good, it has a very obvious heel versus face dynamic to it as well. Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker at WrestleMania 26. Now hold up. I know a lot of y'all are scratching your head right now, I know a lot of y'all are probably going to be saying, WrestleMania 25 is the obvious choice. You know what I mean? Like, it's the greatest, like the sequel was not as good as the original. I know some of y'all are going to be saying that, but hold on. The WrestleMania 26 match just hit different to me. It was because of the stakes that were on the line. Streak versus career. 26 is what I think of when it comes to Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker. And 26 shaped me as a wrestling fan because Shawn Michaels, as I said before, one of my favorites of all time. Seeing one of my favorites retiring in this way was emotional, yet, it felt right. Going out in a classic like this against the legend of the business like Undertaker, I can't think of any better way to write off your career. I don't think you would ever have to wrestle another match after going out like this. You know what I mean? Like going out in such a stellar performance. In such incredible fashion. Crazy spots throughout the match. So many false kick out spots. You know what I mean? So many spots where you thought it was going to be 3, but then someone kicks out. Just from start to finish, it was quite a long match as well. What more could you want, I think it definitely matched the magic of the previous year's match. But in this one, because it had the stakes to it, I just feel like it just edges it slightly, just in terms of the overall match. Not necessarily match quality, but just the overall vibes of the match, like inside and outside of the ring, Consequences to the result of the match, Just overall, I think this is one of the greatest matches of all time. This match right here, I feel like it falls under the radar sometimes because I like a match with stakes, Like, how will this match impact the wrestlers inside the ring or outside of the ring? And this match had it. If Team Austin lost the match, Steve Austin was gone. He was out of here. He had to skedaddle, And spoiler alert, that's exactly what happened. But not without a fight. Shawn Michaels, one of my GOATs, put in a 5-star performance. If they had a sofa rating for this guy, he's getting a 10.0 rating. Even more than that if I could. I'm giving this match 5 stars. Purely because of the clinic that Shawn Michaels put on here. So this match, it's your typical traditional Survivor Series match. You've got a 5v5 situation, elimination style. Usually it'll be a bit of a tennis match of sorts, just back and forth, one man for each team will go down until it's a 1v1 or 2v1 scenario at the end. But in this situation, Shawn Michaels found himself in a 1v3 situation, which is crazy, like a handicap match. That's what it turned into. Shawn Michaels didn't just have to deal with the shenanigans inside of the ring, but also outside of it. Man got busted open in this match, bleeding all over the place, getting his ass whooped by Randy Orton, Christian and Chris Jericho, 3 of the up-and-comers of the company at this time, you know? And Shawn Michaels had to fight from the ground up, show his resilience and perseverance in the situation at hand. Shawn Michaels eliminates Christian, then he eliminates Chris Jericho, and then we find ourselves in a 1v1, Orton versus Shawn. Who's gonna pull it out? Shawn Michaels fought his ass off up to this point. Stone Cold Steve Austin tried to be the equalizer because that Eric Bischoff, he was trying to get involved, trying to be the difference maker. Steve Austin was having none of that. Beat his ass to the backstage area. KO's Randy Orton, he's done. But yeah, man, first time watching this, you know, I didn't have any spoilers for it the first time I watched it. I thought it was over. I thought it was wraps. But in comes fellow Evolution member Batista to ruin the day. Hits him with a Batista bomb, drapes Randy Orton's shoulder across Shawn Michaels, and the referee counts 1, 2, 3, and there goes Stone Cold Steve Austin from the company. At least in a full-time of sorts capacity, you know? Even though I went back and watched this, it's an emotional scene right here, you know? And it was dragged out as well. Shawn Michaels is just laying there bloodied. Steve Austin heads to the ring, picks up Shawn Michaels, and you just see Shawn Michaels apologizing, you know, just, you know, he gave it his all. It's just an emotional sequence right here. And this right here is what wrestling is all about to me, you know, the drama, the action. They had some comedy spots of sorts throughout this match as well. It had a bit of everything, but most importantly, it had a storyline that fans could gravitate towards, you know? Really be invested in. And that's what wrestling is all about to me. Samoa Joe versus AJ Styles versus Christopher Daniels at TNA Unbreakable 2005. Now, when it comes to this match, I think it's safe to say this is one of the greatest non-WWE matches of all time. Simple as that. I will say though, over the past decade or so, there definitely have been some contenders for this spot. But still, for me personally, not only one of the greatest matches of all time that hasn't taken place in the WWE, but I just think one of the greatest of all time, period. And that's saying something because I was a WWE diehard growing up, man. And this match, throughout all of those years, still remained in my top 3 conversation, period. In terms of triple threats, for sure, this is number 1, but of all time, definitely top 3. And this was around the time that I was kind of new to the concept of wrestling outside of WWE. And this match actually took place during TNA's almost infancy stage, I'd say. Within the first few years of them rebranding to the TNA name for sure. And boy did they put on a classic, man. Now I don't remember when exactly I saw this match. I think it would have been around the 2007 era because that was when I really started watching TNA more frequently. The first TNA match that I can remember seeing was Jeff Hardy versus Raven in like a tables match or something like that. But the era that I really got into TNA as a product was around like 2007. I think it was around the time Kurt Angle joined the company. But after watching some of that like 2007 era product, I wanted to see some of the OG stuff they had in the catalog, and this was the match that I saw. And after this, I became an immediate fan of all 3 of these guys. In particular though, AJ Styles. This match alone put AJ Styles in my top 5. And I hadn't even seen all his work up to this point yet, but just this one match alone already put him up there. That's how good a match this was. Each member of this match had their own chance to shine as well. And it was just crazy from start to finish. I'd never seen anything like this. And again, as I said, this was like around like a couple or a few years later from when the match took place itself. So looking back at this, I can only imagine how crazy seeing a match of this caliber was around that 2005 period. Because even around 2007, apart from like Ring of Honor and stuff like that, you didn't really see matches like this. But in 2005, they went crazy. From start to finish, crazy action, crazy high spots, and it just felt like it was constantly going at that fast pace throughout the entire match. This was for the X Division title as well, so the X Division, I'ma say, I don't know if this is a hot take, I don't really think it is. I think the X Division, during its prime, greatest cruiserweight division period. Better than WWE's, better than New Japan's, better than WCW's. This is just my opinion. Do y'all remember the Ultimate X? You can't tell me the X Division wasn't fire, but anyway, when it comes to this match, the main spot that sticks out to me, and there were plenty of spots, don't get me wrong. Samoa Joe was going crazy, that's one thing I do remember, but the main spot was that spiral tap AJ Styles hit from the top rope to break up a pin. Craziness, man, crazy. When I first saw that, I was like, what is going on? I've never seen someone break up a pinfall that way. And that was during the early stages of the match as well, so I knew I was in for a ride, and this match did not disappoint, man. They put their bodies on the line. I don't know if this was the main event of this pay-per-view in particular, but if not, it should have. When it comes to TNA, if you're familiar with the product, this has to be one of the first matches you think of. Old time classic. Simple as that. Shawn Michaels versus Triple H at SummerSlam 2002. This match right here, man. This match right here. 10 out of 10, 20 out of 10, 100 out of 10, whatever you want to give it. Greatest match for me of all time. Of course, I'm going to have bias towards this match, you know. SummerSlam 2002 being one of my first real exposures to wrestling, you know. Of course, that's going to play a part in it being my favorite match, or the match that is what made me the fan I am today. But the storyline going into it, although I wasn't able to be there to watch Raw on a week-to-week basis at this point, you know, I'd gone back like a year or two after this match taking place, so time had passed. To this day, I can watch this match today and just be in awe of what I'm watching, you know? No real flips or tricks in this match, but just a typical brawl between two former brothers going head to head to prove who is the best and just fight it out to settle the score that they had at the time. Although this was the first match that they had had, it felt like a match that was the culmination of a rivalry, you know what I mean? It felt like they'd been feuding for years, when in actuality, although they had history, you know, in DX, and before that, this match right here, it felt like the third match to end a trilogy. That's the vibe that this match gave off. And you don't really get that often nowadays. I feel in terms of recent memory, in terms of the date of this video, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre is, I'd say, the closest that we've gotten in recent memory to match that, you know, it has that big fight feel in their first encounter. Man, just the presentation of it, you know, like the promo package leading up to the match, classic. The song choice, I think Jim Johnson was on the acoustics for this one. Shout out to Jim Johnson. But yeah, man, the promo package leading up to the match, killer. And then we get to the match itself. Craziness, you know? Just a slugfest between two former brothers. The spot that stands out to me in this match, what should I pick? Well, number one spot I do want to point out was there was a bit where Triple H hit like a backbreaker to Shawn Michaels through a chair. Now, we've seen that a few times over the years nowadays, but at this point, you know, this was like one of my first hardcore matches that I'd seen at the time, until obviously, you know, I go down the wrestling rabbit hole. But seeing weapons used in such interesting ways as well, I'm like, what's going on here? You know what I mean? Like, these guys really hate each other IRL. That's how I'm looking at it. The match was magical, man, you know, magnifique. A lot of people say Jeff Hardy is the reason why, you know, when they climb up ladders, you know, they get that venom, they get that venom vibe, like, they get that Green Goblin mask talking to them, speaking, really speaking to them to hit a swanton off of that shit. This is what I thought of when it came to ladders, you know, not the Hardys. I'm thinking of this spot right here. But yeah, I forgot to mention, this was Shawn Michaels' return to wrestling at this point. So I'm sure if you were watching WWE at this time, this would have been an emotional match for you guys as well. But just being someone that, you know, didn't even know anything of the characters at the time, all I had to go off of is the promo package leading up to the match. if I could understand the story, and I was like real young at this point, then I can just only imagine what it would have been like just seeing the weekly TV up to this point, or even just being a wrestling fan for years and, you know, anticipating Shawn Michaels' return to in-ring competition. But yeah, man, after the match had finished, Shawn Michaels is celebrating, but Triple H, he has to get the last laugh. Hits my guy in the back with a hammer. Pause on that. And then one more time for good measure, and Triple H leaves the arena with his head held high. And it was safe to say that feud was only just getting started.